Hello, we've got a short story to share today. He whose name means victory. This is coming from Adventurous Pirate, who I know is Ulrich. Posted here, as well as my World Anvil and Patreon. Characters and world belong to Ulrich. You can find Ulrich over on Patreon. I know he has a series of novels that he's written, various lengths, but it's all fantasy stuff. I think things you might find interesting. Little pronunciation guide, because he knows I butcher the words. Here we go. We have Ajax, Carrie Leon, Carol Leon, yeah, Carol Leon, and Drac, which is how I would say that is Drac. A towering wall of red tinted armor and gold and scarlet scales, a hulking warrior without equal, a terror on the battlefield, implacable, immovable, and to this day, indestructible. He whose blade has pierced the hides of dragons, from which he carved out his shield, and those glowing yellow eyes strike fear into the hearts of any brave enough to stand before him or his allies. Ajax Caerleon, whose name means victory. This heavy handed phrase is a label claimed and used most commonly by he who bears it. For if one were to ask the meaning behind it, this would be exactly how Ajax would describe himself. Many who meet the Drac warrior despondent would also go on to describe him with perhaps other less flattering phrases: brusque, taciturn, rigid, aggressive, confrontational, to name but a few. And to these descriptions, Ajax would also claim with pride. It is all too easy to an outsider to assume that Ajax is merely a blowhard, a self obsessed warrior all too well aware of his strength and having grown cocky or arrogant when discussing his lofty titles. Many in the warrior culture of Ulrich's bastards would have eagerly challenged Ajax in order to knock him from his scaly pedestal. Only then do they learn the truth, one that his closest of companions learned long ago and have come to rely on. Ajax's name is not just a mere boast. Whether friend, foe, rival, or brother in arms, all who witness Ajax fight in duels or protracted battles know with certain that he lives up to even his own legend, wielding it as effectively as he does his oversized blade, which is his oldest known possession. For Ajax has never once been defeated in battle. But how does one gain such a title, to be able to claim that their very name means they are assured of victory? It's a long and bloody story, one that even its bearer does not ponder happily. For as long as Ajax has been alive, he has been a fighter. From the shadows of the slave pits of the infamous Red Gauntlet, out into the blistering sun, immediately defeated by the bloodthirsty roars of the crowd, Ajax's first memories are of battle. None know, even he, how he came to be a gladiator of Malik's twisted arena, a place of monsters and equally monstrous men. His first coherent thought was of a blade being shoved into his hand and forced out into the ring for his life, for the fight of his life against a gruesome beast. From the first time his weapon tasted blood, Ajax knew what a sword was, how to swing it, how to adjust the weight, length, and shape. And from the first time he was struck in kind, savage claws raking his scaly hide, he knew what pain was and quickly how to mitigate, to avoid, or even to just ignore it. Blows that would cripple a strong man bothered him as much as insect stings, ferocious monsters with rending talons as much as a cat's scratches. And dire men with deadly blades might as well be scarecrows with paper swords. From there, one would have described his debut as something born of a story of the old age, of the time of the all conqueror. 3 bouts was the tradition for any new gladiator. 3 bouts against the worst those dark days had to offer. Planting foot upon his triumphs, he roared in challenge, in opposition to the tyrannical arena masters before them, as if the world itself bore witness. He took his name as if to challenge even Malik himself. He dared his overseers to pit their best against him, and they responded with eagerness. The crowds were ready to see blood, but even more, they were ready to see a champion born. Ajax did not disappoint. The Drac was an oddity this far north, deep in the center of Malik's dark empire. For many miles from all corners of the land, people came to catch a glimpse of the one known as the unkillable gladiator. They wished to bear witness, to see with their own eyes the truth behind the rumors of his victories in the gauntlet. Vast menageries of beasts, of monsters, of equally desperate and savage fighters, unleashed against the lone warrior clad only in rags and badly fitted armor. Wielding weapons of steel and fire against them, no matter the challenge, he would charge without fear of death, or perhaps in direct defiance of it. In the end, it was always the same. Always a show, always a victory, and for his reward, he returned to his cell to await the next. And so he fought and won for 20 long years. But life must be more than this, Ajax thought. More than the ceaseless, never-ending struggle for life against the cruel and the tyrannical, all for the sake of entertaining the howling crowds. Even alone, his dragon's heart burned with the need for true valor, for distinction above martial prowess. In his darkened cage, surrounded by those who hated and feared him, Ajax was unafraid of death, so long as he lived, even briefly, by his own terms. His chance would come, and come it did. There were few friends to make in the gauntlet. Every day one might be pitted against the other in brutal combat to the death. But not Ajax. He refused to deal the killing blow against his fellow slaves, drawing the ire of his masters and forcing him to yet more and more battles against overwhelming odds. Even those who resented Ajax's reputation could not help but be drawn to the Drac for his mercy and honor. Even in rags, he had the heart and bearing of a knight. All could sense he had a greater destiny than to die here, and he would not be contented until the entirety of their hellish imprisonment was brought to an end. There, in the bowels of the Red Gauntlet pens, amidst the desperate and the downtrodden, the sparks of rebellion were kindled. It began in a bout between Ajax and one of his many rival comrades. Easily gaining victory over his fellow, he was commanded, as ever, to dispatch them, to which, of course, he refused. The crowds were used to this sort of behavior from him, but the masters were not. With rumors of Malik's supposed disappearance, their power and authority was beginning to slip. People came to now see Ajax not to see men to fight to the death. He had become something more than just a fighter, a champion. He had become the very weapon against those who had used him for their own gains for over 2 decades. And now, at their most tenuous of positions, he dared once again to openly oppose them. How much power would they have if the common folk saw the warrior once again go unpunished? Angrily, they repeated the command, to which Ajax again defied them. Weapons were trained on the Drac, his life ready to be cut down for insolence, if nothing else. He could have been struck down then and there, and the legends of Ajax Caerleon cut short before it was ever truly begin. If not for the intervention of the crowd, their champion to them was more than just a fighter at this point. To the victims of Malik's reign, he'd become a symbol to many, reminding them, inspiring them to resist once again. Malik's sudden absence from his own fortress had thrown many of his land into uproar, and there had already been many rebellions now that their greatest enemy was seemingly gone. The arena quickly turned into a riot when the guards were forced to turn their weapons on the crowd, the survivors driven away or imprisoned, and the gauntlet's remaining events brought to an early end. The masters were beyond furious and terrified for themselves. Now, and they knew they had to act. That night, they sent assassins after Ajax, but they did not find him unprepared. Ajax had planned for this. as had his fellow gladiators. En masse, they rushed and overwhelmed half a dozen would-be killers and then the guards who had long tormented them. They were ready to escape, joyous in having cut free their bonds of fear and bloody servitude. But Ajax would not let them. Bloody-handed justice would be met out upon the cruel masters. It was to be their only reward, said Drac. The grandest prize, to know what for all their atrocities to gain and hold power, their sadistic minds had failed to quash the warrior's spirit, failed to reach a place from which they could not fall. For the warriors, Ajax's rivals, it would be more than simple victory over their abusers. To take one's fate, once ordained and abandoned, seized again by one's own hands, and wring it free of those shackles more binding than any manacle. Avenge the fallen, revenge the pain. It's unclear exactly what he did or said to inspire those desperate, savage folk that had earned more than any an easy freedom. But as one who has seen Ajax inspire courage in even the most broken of souls, there is no doubt that he lit the fires of valor in them, and within himself blazed like a sun. From the armory they procured weapons. In the dead of night they launched a surprise raid upon the entirety of the Red Gauntlet. The cells stretching for miles beneath the ring were broken open. The masters put to the sword, the menageries broken open, the captured citizens from the riots set free. In one night the horrors of Maleg's arena were brought to an end, just like the tyrant himself. Its vileness was wiped out as surf washes away blood upon the sand. The fear that had kept the master so long in power was shattered. The Red Gauntlet was razed to the ground. Its prison tunnels collapsed, and as bloodied dawn rose, it too, like shadows receding, the nightmare was gone. Of that place, Ajax took with him only one thing: the resplendent sword he wielded in but one scaly hand that another man might struggle to carry in two. Free to see the world beyond Maleg's crumbling empire, the Drax's adventures had only just begun. Battles and wars untold were yet laid before him. Desperate last stands, ferocious sieges, deathly encounters in a world whose age had just begun to turn. The days of the warrior were ending, leaving those like he desperate now to prove who he was in a world he did not recognize. He does not talk easily of his dark past, but carries with him always the name he fought and earned in that bloody place: Ajax Caerleon, the unkillable gladiator, fire-fear, Krakenbane, he whose name means victory. But to me, I simply call him friend. And if you listened, thank you so much.